Hey, welcome back. So you've seen this tree-based construction now very many times. Let's talk about at least one different signature scheme. And these will be, in our case, let's say textbook RSA signatures, but we will kind of link them to the full domain hash RSA signatures. So if you remember this, the textbook RSA signatures, they were the ones where essentially to sign something, you just raised it to the power of your private exponent D. And then to verify, you just checked that you could reverse this using the public exponent E. It was just correct because essentially in the exponent we can compute modulo phi of n, and D and E are chosen specifically so that they are the inverse of each other modulo phi of n. And we've seen that these textbook RSA signatures are like laughably insecure. So immediately I can give you the forgery 0 for message M, because 0 raised to the power of E is still 0. I could also give you 1 with the same argument. And if I ask for 2 signatures, I will get M to the D and let's say M hat to the D. And then I could just say you I could just multiply those two and then just get a valid signature on M times M hat. So textbook RSA in the conventional sense of digital signatures, not secure though. They are, however, secure in a more narrow sense that's not necessarily practical, but that kind of illustrates what these RSA signatures are good for. And I'll call this notion randomized attacks. So let's call it R sign forge. In this security game, essentially, we will make sure that the only messages that ever touch RSA will be random. And for random messages, all of this actually kind of works fine. So in the randomized signature forging game, we have, as usual, a challenger that generates a key pair. And now, in addition, this challenger chooses a random message M prime. And this random message is the message that A will have to generate a forgery for. So the idea is that, let's say in practice, you make sure that only random messages are kind of valid input to the signature. And at some point, an adversary has such a random message and wants to generate a signature on it, even though the holder of the secret key doesn't want to sign it. Then you give all of this stuff to the adversary. Then the signature queries in this game are just randomized signature queries, meaning that the adversary doesn't give the challenger a message, but the challenger chooses its own random message from the message space M, and then it just hands the signature on the random message and the random message itself to the adversary. And eventually the adversary outputs a signature, sigma prime, on hopefully M prime, and this is a valid forgery if the signature is valid. We don't need to check whether or not A has queried for this message before, because A cannot query for specific messages. It can only query for random messages, and because our message spaces are large enough, he will never, through a query, hit the specific M prime that he wants signed. So this is this kind of weird security notion. If you think about it a little bit, we'll talk about this later, but these random messages are very related to what we do in the full domain hash. Because essentially, if you're using a random oracle to first hash all messages that touched RSA, then you are kind of in this random message model. So all of the messages that you're signing are just random, and this is because they are first thrown through a random function. But let's talk about this later. Let's first prove this. And to be able to prove this secure, we need like a formal definition of what we assume is true about RSA. And the thing that we assume is true about RSA is that it's a one-way permutation. We just write down the security experiment slightly differently because there's now actually like a setup for this. And the one-way permutation is from Zn to Zn for random n, which is the product of two primes, etc. So we choose all of these parameters, and then we choose a random image that needs to be inverted. Because it's a one-way permutation, it doesn't matter whether we choose a random pre-image and then apply the one-way function, or we just choose a random image, because it's a permutation. It's bijective. So then we give this as a challenge to the adversary. The adversary tries to find the pre-image, and he wins if actually this is the pre-image. So the function that's kind of the one-way function here, or one-way permutation here, is f of x equal to x raised to the eth power. And from this assumption, we could already use RSA just to throw it into Lampert's signature scheme, because Lampert's signature scheme was just able to use any one-way function. So similarly here, we could also have used that. But the really cool thing about RSA is that this is not just a one-way function, or one-way permutation even. It's actually a trapdoor one-way permutation. Meaning that if I know d, then you can easily give me some y, and I can raise it to the power of d, like any y. I can efficiently raise it to the power of d, and then this would become kind of the pre-image of this. Why? Well, we can kind of recompute it. If I take this x to the power of e, then this is y to the et. So I've easily found a pre-image for any given y. I just need to know the d. And this d then is called a trapdoor, because although it is a one-way function, so it's hard to invert, there's a trapdoor, so a specific secret value that still allows you to invert it efficiently. But if you don't know the secret value, you have no idea how to invert it. And this ability to invert stuff is actually used on the spot here. So if you look at the signing algorithm, it basically just says invert m. And then the verification is check whether this thing that you've just inverted, whether this is actually the correct inversion, by just applying the function again and checking whether this is actually the correct pre-image. So actually, if we wanted to use this in Lampert's signature scheme, we could even be a little bit more clever about it. So for example, we wouldn't have to store the secret key at all. We could just publish the public key and then just store the d, which is kind of this trapdoor. And then whenever we need the pre-image for a specific part of the public key, we can just use d in order to compute it. So our secret key consists of only this one trapdoor value, and this one trapdoor value is kind of powerful enough to do inversions of any arbitrary values. But anyway, this is not what we're talking about. We are talking about doing textbook-RSA signatures against randomized attacks, which will later be related to the full domain hash stuff. So let's do the reduction. So we take an adversary A against the randomized message attacks against the signature scheme, this RSA signature scheme. And we construct an A prime that's supposedly able to invert stuff with RSA. So what's the first step? Well, we can already write down what we know. C will give us these whole parameters, n, e, and y. And now A prime eventually wants to know a pre-image of y, and it hopes that the signature adversary can help with it. Well, because the signature scheme is the way it is, if I want to sign a value m, then I need to invert it. I need to raise it to the power of d. So it's a natural choice to make this one random message that the adversary is supposed to sign to just make this y. So as m prime, we just give it y, which works because y is random in Zn. The message space is Zn, so m prime is then also a random message from the message space. Now the only thing that happens is that we get queries. So the signature adversary A can query for signatures on random messages. So now what we need to give him now is signatures on random messages and the messages for them. How can we do this? So how can we come up with a random pair M sigma? So a random message with a signature on it. So if you've carefully read this RSA full domain hash proof, you already know this. Because the same trick is used there. If I want to have a random pair of message and signature, I can just generate a random signature and compute the message for which this is the signature from that. Okay, so I choose a random sigma and then raise the sigma to the power of e. So we can answer queries truthfully for the adversary against the signature game. Then eventually the adversary will output a signature. And we will just output this to our challenger, hoping that it's the inversion of the RSA thing. And well, what we can notice is if the verification of this sigma prime here works for m prime, which is y, then we indeed have that sigma prime raised to the power of e is equal to m prime. This is equal to y. Then we have that our adversary A prime will also win in its RSA inverting game. So that's it. A and A prime have the same chance of success. So A prime wins if and only if the signature that A outputs is valid. All of the queries can be answered correctly. So that's it. Now let's take a second and think about what this has to do with the RSA full domain hash proof. Essentially the same idea applied there too. So let's start with the signature queries. The idea there is that whenever I program the random oracle, I do it in a way to make sure that I have a signature for it. I just set h of m to be sigma raised to the power of e for random sigma. And then this makes sigma a valid signature on m, at least in this hashed in sign, right? Because in hashed in sign, the verification becomes, and because it's a random oracle, I can choose this stuff randomly. I can program my stuff into this. So these are the signature queries. Now the thing that's much more complicated in the RSA full domain hash proof than in this proof is this thing with the random message that we want to have a forgery for. So essentially this whole reduction here was very easy because we could immediately give the adversary the message that we wanted to have him give me a signature for. And then the signature, the result of this, is immediately the solution to our RSA inversion game. But in the normal signature game, we don't have this luxury. We can't just tell the adversary, hey, you need to give us a forgery for this exact message. We need to kind of smuggle it into its run. And the way that we do this is we program the random oracle so that for some message m star, it will actually output this challenge y. Okay? So then, if the adversary chooses to give us a forgery for m star, then we're in luck. Then we will have inverted this y and we get our solution. If the adversary gives us a forgery on any other message, well, bad luck. But then we can do the standard index guessing stuff. So we can just guess the how many query to its random oracle will contain the message that it will give us a forgery for. Remember that we can just assume that it will definitely query the message before outputting the signature. So one of these queries will contain the message that it outputs a forgery for. And then for that message, we just program the random oracle. Of course, if we query the random oracle in this way, where we embed our y, we can't actually answer for signature queries anymore because we don't know the preimage for y. We only know the pre-image if we do this other way of programming the random oracle. So we need to be lucky that he will give us a forgery for M star instead of asking us for a signature on M star. But again, that's just index guessing and then some probability analysis, and then that's already it. But overall, this is the main insight. This scheme here, this is the essence of RSA full domain hash. Essentially, you use textbook RSA, which normally is horribly, horribly broken. But if you make sure that all of the messages are kind of random, then things are fine. By the way, the same thing will happen for RSA encryption, because RSA encryption also sucks for deterministic messages. But if you put in random messages, then it's actually okay. All right, that's it for the security of textbook RSA signatures, and by extension, the full domain hash. Thanks for watching this, I guess, and see you next week.